This is Love Never Fails with your host, Marilyn Redmond. Marilyn shares her experience, strength, and hope, and includes tools to help you find your inner strength for health, healing, and empowerment. So now, please welcome the host of Love Never Fails, Marilyn Redmond.
I'm your host, Marilyn Redmond. You're listening to Love Never Fails. We are on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. And I'm so glad to have everybody back today, Tuesday afternoon, very hot afternoon where I am. Hope you're in a little cooler space. And we have a lot of loyal listeners. We have a lot of people giving us good reviews. We have a lot of people learning to join us that we're here on Tuesday afternoon. So tell your friends and all the people that you know that are in like-minded ways of what we're talking about on our show. It's not the typical radio show, usually topics that are not quite the usual ones you will hear on a radio show. As we have today, past lives. And it's a topic that people might be curious about. I know when I first heard the word past lives, I didn't even know what they were talking about. And guess what? I ended up becoming internationally board certified to do past life regressions. And I've also been trained on the board of the American Board of Hypnotherapy. So I'm internationally and United States trained. Do this all the time with people, and they love getting the results. You know, some people are saying, well, this isn't really going on. Well, I'm here to say a little bit about the history of past lives. They actually are mentioned in the Bible. However, there was a Nicene Council, 325 AD, I believe it was, where the church pulled out the biblical verses that related to past lives or reincarnation. And actually, Edgar Cayce's son came back in this lifetime to get that information out to the people that it had been taken out of the Bible. However, they missed a few verses, and a fellow named Herbert Puryear wrote a book called Why Jesus Taught Reincarnation. And it's a fascinating book, and it brings the answers together that so many of us have been looking for. On the back of the cover, it says, why did God create the death of his son? Well, non-Christians really go to hell. Why does so much of life seem so unfair? And he goes through, has a lot of different really great answers in this book that you might be interested in. So it's not really something that is totally off the wall. It really has just been hidden, or we've just not been told all the story. And hopefully today we're going to hear some more of that, of how it works and what it's about. The first time I came involved with past lives, I was in high school. And in about 56, I guess it was, I was sitting in the dentist's office, and on the front cover of Life magazine, there was a picture, and the cover story was the search for Bridey Murphy. Now, some of you people listening out there might remember they also made it into a movie. And it was about a hypnotist in this living room, regressed a woman, and she found herself in Ireland, and her name was Bridey Murphy. And it was a fascinating book. I read the article in the magazine until they called me into the dentist's office, and I wasn't very happy because I wanted to read the rest of the story. So I didn't know anything more about it until I was new in the Edgar Cayce Association and going to their programs, and there was going to be a program in Seattle, and two men were going to be coming out from Virginia Beach, Leo Bolduc and Henry Reed, and the program was called The Two Henrys. And those guys worked together in various programs, and I wanted to go. So the program was pretty interesting. The room was full, and it was, I was having a great time. And at one of the breaks, Henry Bolduc said, I want to invite all of you to my past life intensive class, and said when it was being held in Virginia, and he wanted everybody, of course, to come. And I'm sitting there dumbfounded because I don't know what he's talking about. And so that was one of my experiences where my guides talked in my ear and said, we want you to go up and sign up. And I responded in my head, where this is all inside of me. I said, I don't even know what they're talking about. And my guide said, go up and register for the class. So in those days, I was very obedient and dutiful. So I was being told to do it. So obviously I went up and stood in line. And while I'm in line to sign up, I said to myself, how am I going to get there? And the answer came back to me, you have frequent flyer miles. You can use those. Oh, well, of course, that would get me there free, right? So my next excuse was, how am I going to pay for the room? And the voice came back and said, why don't you share a room with someone else and you can share the bill? That won't make it so expensive. So I thought, well, that makes sense. And so by the time I got up to my turn to give him my money to reserve my place, I wrote out my check for $90, and he gave his smile to. He was a very wonderful man and had this beautiful smile, and how could you turn that smile down? He was really a cool guy. And so I paid my money and found out they would pick me up at the airport and take me to the program in Virginia, so I wouldn't have to worry about getting there, which really made it easy for me. So I paid my money and off I flew to Virginia, and it was quite an experience going. I went twice, for the beginning intensive and then for the advanced course. And it was really quite an experience to be in a room with that many very spiritual people taking the class. It was a good-sized room in a Holiday Inn, and it was around the wall of the room, a kind of a banquet room, were the people for the class, and next to them, I saw all these people in what you would say that had passed over, standing next to them, and I also saw the rest of the room full of angels. I was seeing those passed over and angels sitting there. It was just like they were right in front of me, and there was no doubt in my mind they were there. One lady went into the restroom, and I had to follow her in, and at that point, no other people were in there, so I said to her, who's this person standing next to you? And I described her, and she says, oh, that's my mother. And I said, well, she has a message for you. And I told her the message, and she went back into the room and very excited about it. And then Henry said, well, would I like to say something? Because she never asked me for permission to blab to everybody. He was a little embarrassed about it. And I agreed that, I would be willing to talk with anybody interested in hearing about friends or family from the other side. And I had some marvelous experiences doing that particular day. And I do that with people still today, and I want to do a program in coming weeks about messages I've received from those passed over. But today we're talking about past lives, your own past lives. And so I wanted to mention that some people are a little afraid of regression. And it's nothing to be afraid of, actually, because we're in that state twice a day. You might not have recognized it when you're going to sleep at night, but you take your feet off the ground and you climb in bed and you're kind of in that hazy place. And it's because your mind can leave your physical body. And in that altered state, that's what we call it, is an altered state or a meditative state, you can actually go into finding your past lives. And so when you wake up in the morning, you're in that altered state again until you put your feet on the ground and your mind and body come back together. So that's really a state that you're in twice a day. So it's nothing mysterious and it's nothing scary. It's just, are you open and ready to do it? Are you welcoming and embracing it? The first time I was doing hypnosis, I went to a person, I wanted some answers. And it scared me because my church had preached against it. So I had to go back again, and by then I realized it wasn't anything wrong, and it was going to be okay. I had marvelous results. And we'll tell you more about past lives and actual past lives when we come back. I'm Marilyn Redmond. You are listening to Love Never Fails. We are coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. I am Marilyn Redmond, and this is Love Never Fails. We're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio, and that means you can call in with your questions or your concerns, feedback, anything you want to offer to our listeners and have a concern or want to speak up about. We're at 866 866-451-1451. Give us a call. I'm on the internet answering questions. I get about 1,000 readers a day answering, and where they're reading my answers. And so, this isn't something new to me. So if you have questions or concerns, feel free to pick up that phone, 866-451-1451. And we'd love to hear from you. We've had callers. You aren't the first one. So we're talking about past lives today, and if you were more interested in the search for Bridey Murphy, which is kind of how it came out into the awareness of the public, Morey Bernstein wrote that book. It's still available. Morey Bernstein wrote The Search for Bridey Murphy, and that's kind of how a lot of this interest began. And Edgar Cayce brought it forward in his readings. He lived from 1900 to 1945 and did 12,000 readings. Most of them were health readings. But some people started asking about, well, where did I come from? What's my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing in life? Those kind of things, too. And so he started asking the source. That's where he got his information from. The highest source is what he asked for. And Edgar Cayce started giving information about our spiritual origin and our spiritual path and what that was about. All his books are absolutely wonderful. In fact, the Why Jesus Taught Reincarnation book is printed by his press. It's called the ARE Press. If you're interested in that book I referred to earlier, Why Jesus Taught Reincarnation by Herbert Purrier, you can get on the internet to go to ARE Press, and they'll have it for you there. It's a wonderful book. When I got through reading it, I was like on cloud nine. It was terrific. It's very spiritual. Right out of the Bible, quotes to support it all. So you don't have to be fearful. Edgar Cayce brought this probably into the mainstream. He's the most popular person that actually started telling people about this. And people started paying attention and wanted more answers. And so he did several thousand readings on this kind of information for people, and you can find it in his work. And then Dr. Milton H. Erickson was the first clinician who took this into being what you might call mainstream. And his clinical work brought it into a setting where people were actually going and getting hypnotized, getting regressed into past situations to heal whatever they needed to heal in their life. So most people, when they started doing past life regressions, were actually looking for, what was in my past that still needs to be resolved. Most people don't understand that we actually have many, many memories. You might not want to call them past lives, just call them older memories that we still have to resolve. When we come in, we have only come in with the understanding of this life. If we had to deal with all our lives at once, we'd be overwhelmed. I've had about 650 past lives. My friend that I know has had less than that. Some people have over 1,000 past lives. It takes a lot of lives to grow into our soul being healed and coming into wholeness, a whole soul. You are a whole soul, a Holy Spirit. And to do that, love is the glue of the universe. And each time you can identify something from a past memory that is keeping you wounded, your soul is splintered off from being whole, and you bring it back together with love. So what we really do is we find out, where do you have to do forgiveness? You give up the past for a new today. And in that forgiveness, it heals each splinter of our soul back together, and we can regain our wholeness again. So it's actually very spiritual work. And it's important that we do it, because if not, we're still running without all information. I can make better decisions the more I know about myself. And we're actually kind of like an iceberg with parts of us. The bigger part under the ice, under the water, is what we don't see. And that's the part we're talking about today, is bringing that to the awareness that what's under there that we still aren't aware of that needs to be healed, so we can take appropriate action to resolve it in a loving way. And when we do that, our life gets actually better. Each time we do something good, we get good results. And this is what happens. It actually makes things go smoother in our lives to resolve these things. We come into harmony and balance because we really need to look at our, not just our, what's going on with us right now, but physically, mentally, our attitudes, our emotions, all of these come into play for what's going on right now in our life. And if something isn't going the way you would like it to, maybe there's a reason why. And when you do past lives, you can get to the root cause of why is this going amiss. So we're accessing our soul's history, really. And each person comes in at the right time and has the experiences necessary in this life to handle what needs to be healed. And those are usually the lessons we're fighting, the ones we don't want to look at because it would be easier not to. So we either deny them or ignore them or, just pretend they're not there. But they're actually stored in what's called the Akashic Records, and each person has, another word for that is the Book of Life. And so if you're looking in your past for, what's still going on today, that's a really valid way is to look at your past lives. Most past lives come up in a visual way for people. I'm very visual when I'm doing this on myself. I can do self-hypnosis. You can too. In fact, my teacher, Leo Bolduc, who I went to his classes in Virginia, has several books available on the internet. When he died, he took off all the copyrights off his material. And you can get on the internet at henryleobolduc.com, I think it is. I've got it here in my notes somewhere. If it's not that, I'm sure I'll come across it. But Henry Leo Bolduc, he's on Google. And one of his books is self-hypnosis, and he has all kinds of what you call scripts, and you can take yourself through the script and find answers for yourself. So it's important to know that we are able to do this or have someone help us if we want that assistance. And taking a look at the visual of the pictures come into your mind, and you can relate of what's going on in the story, and then the story will kind of come alive. And it's really exciting to see if you ended up as having sandals on your feet or being barefoot or having boots on your feet or whatever costume you have when you appear in your past life. We're going to be back telling you more about past lives. Don't go away. I'm Marilyn Redmond. You're listening to Love Never Fails, and we are on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. I am your host, Marilyn Redmond. This is Love Never Fails. We're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio, and we're having an exciting talk today about past lives, something that might be something you've never heard about before. Maybe this is your first time, or maybe you just know a little about it, but hopefully we'll give you some more information so you'll be more eager to really go ahead and try it, because most people really find it very helpful. When you go into this regression state, it feels like almost this. People will say at times, I don't even feel like I'm in a trance. I don't feel regressed, and I just said, well, just pretend just make up what comes into your imagination. And sometimes they'll feel something, have feelings about it. Sometimes they'll visualize something. That's why usually put you into a situation where you figure out what clothing you're wearing and what kind of a house you had, so you can find a calendar and figure out the year it is and those kind of things. And so gradually, who's in the story with you and how the story unravels. And so it's knowing more about, what's going on in that life. And if you come for more than one life regression, it's really important to space them out so that you can kind of absorb and process what you learned from the healing of that and the information. And with several regressions, you can find a pattern. And you can say, oh, I can see. In fact, I had a gal show up who was very much attracting codependent men, and she wanted to get out of that trap. And she told me what was going on, and she says, I want to change this. Well, it's very interesting how the brain will automatically take you to the right past life to heal what you're looking for. So we found her in a situation, and she's going through imagining what's going on and telling me the story of what's going on. And all of a sudden she said, "Oh, is that what I'm doing? I don't have to do that anymore." And she immediately figured out what she needed to change and get out of being in those kind of relationships. So it's really kind of interesting when you can find a pattern of what's going on in your life. And most people aren't famous, but it's kind of fun to think that you might be famous. In my case, I found out I was a famous person. It was Sacagawea. And it came to me not in a past life regression the first time. I learned it while I was doing a report in junior high school on Sacagawea, and the voice inside said, "You were Sacagawea." And I discounted it because at church that would have not been appropriate, and my parents were into that kind of thing. So I never paid any attention to it. And then I happened to go to Fort Clatsop, and my boyfriend we found out, and this has been verified by several mediums, he was Lewis of Lewis and Clark. And so we went to Fort Clatsop. We go there actually quite often, down to Seaside, Oregon, where it is, by Astoria on the Columbia River. That's where they camped out at the end of their trail across the United States. That was their winter camp. The first time I was down there, I couldn't go through the doorway, the threshold into the bedroom where Sacagawea stayed that winter with Charbonneau, who she was married to at that time. And she was an Indian, of course, and I was his second wife. Very brutal. That's part of my domestic violence story that I carried over from my past life. And I couldn't get past the threshold to go in there. I just couldn't. I mean, it was just like there was a wall there, but there wasn't. And then I went down another time later. I was actually able to get into the room that time and sit on the bed, but I was numb because there was a lot of brutality went on in the room. And then now when I go down there, it's like neutral. I can handle it. So, but I've also been verified by several other mediums that this is actually true. This energy carried on into this lifetime where I was in domestic violence with the same man, only this time his name was different. It wasn't Charbonneau. We had the same child we did in that marriage, and the poor fellow is still having problems from that past life. So, but I know today what to do to heal it. I've been through it. I've been there, done that. And I know forgiveness is the answer today. I did forgive him. I had to leave it in the past because I discovered that if I forgive, that's sending love. And when you send love, then someone can't hurt you because you can't attack love. So through learning to have forgiveness and compassion for him, he taught me how to change that energy I needed to change. And that's the beautiful part of past lives. Now that is no longer an issue in my life. I don't pick men that I'm going to have abusive relationships with anymore. In fact, the fellow I go with now was Lewis, and we have a relationship of unconditional love because I know how to change that and not send it out so it comes back and hurts me anymore. So I've also had other past lives I've had to heal. And one was involved with my sister, a relative, taking my inheritance and not going to court and getting it back, and for discovering that what I'd done to her in a past life was really brutal. It was really 1,000 years ago, and that's how life was in those days. And that was the way they handled things. They didn't have the police, so to speak, in those days to handle, and courts and justices and so forth to take care of things. So by not going after her to get my money that she stole from me, I actually stopped the problem between the two of us, and today we actually are on speaking terms. So, we can heal things in our lives through this that are actually amazing. And to find out what you were in the past and how those traits come into your life. Nowadays, a lot of people come to past lives to find out what their talents are. In my case, I discovered when I was in Egypt, and I saw the hieroglyphics on the tombs of the pharaohs. That's one of the places we went, was to the Valley of the Kings. And all of a sudden, it just dawned on me, I put those hieroglyphics up there, and that's why I like to draw and paint with charcoal. And with pastels because that's how that was. Those hieroglyphics were painted with pastels. So if you were hearing more about past lives and how they can help you, I'm Marilyn Redmond. You're listening to Love Never Fails. We are on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Come on back, and we have some more information about past lives and how you can benefit. So keep tuned. I am Marilyn Redmond. This is Love Never Fails. We are coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. And I know somebody out there has a question. Call in at 866-451-1451 and just join us on this show. And whatever your question is probably what a lot of other people are thinking too. You can be the one that actually calls in, 866-451-1451. And I wanted to continue about past lives because I find it pretty fascinating. I'd like to think I was this wonderful person and the other guy's the bad guy. It's like pointing the finger at somebody, but the problem is there's three fingers pointing back. And I discovered, I can look really good, but sometimes I'm covering up something I sure don't want to look at. Something I'm not very proud of sometimes, maybe. A little sheepish or guilty about. Edgar Cayce says we've lived all the different characters and all the different roles in our lives over these lives. It's not just you were always a wonderful person. You have the good parts of your your past lives and the parts that weren't so good. And you have to look at the parts of your life and bring them all back into harmony and balance. He says we have to experience every vibration to raise it back up into the source of who we are, into the oneness, the unconditional love of God. So if you have some things that need to be addressed and healed, this is one way to say, oh, guess what? It's going to improve your life today besides. So healing the past is a very productive, actually, thing to do. We're like diamonds, all the facets of the diamond. We're kind of like the diamonds in the rough. And some of those facets have to be polished and cleaned up so it's really brilliant and shines beautifully. So it's important to shine up all the facets of your life and be that beautiful, bright, shining diamond. And I did come across the website for Henry Bolduc for his free books. If you're interested, he had 45 years in the field. His material is real simple and easy to follow. And it's HenryBolduc.com, HenryBolduc.com. And so if you want to check out his material, I just actually printed off a script he has available that's all free, it's copyright free, to get into your Akashic records. And I want to try that, in fact, in the next couple of days. So you can print off any part of it you want and use it. Well, as I mentioned, forgiveness is the key in this situation. And the point is we wrote these scripts. Now, that might shake somebody up. When I found out that I wrote this script to come in, this was the energy I needed to change so I could finish healing my soul into being whole and not wounded and damaged and splintered off. I'm not broken. And so I healed it all back together with God's love and forgiveness. And when I forgive others, we give up the past for a new day. I forgive myself. It was necessary for me to have that experience, to become more loving in unconditional love for those people around me. Those people are my mirrors, and what they're projecting to me is what I am still sending out. So in my case, as I mentioned about my ex-husband on the last section of the program, I was participating in that domestic violence just as much as he was. It takes two to tango. And when I realized that in defending myself, it was like an attack on him. If you aren't sending love, you're sending fear. You're sending an attack to somebody. And I was always trying to protect myself. And of course, it was subconscious. You didn't see me trying to protect myself, but that's what I was doing. And he felt the emotional impact of that, like me taking out an invisible gun and shooting him back. If he attacked me, I'd shoot back, so to speak, and then he'd attack me back. And it becomes like a poker game where you raise the ante until it becomes, of course, labeled domestic violence, and it's a passive-aggressive game. And by forgiveness, I stopped the game. And you can stop those situations in your past by applying forgiveness. And then I've been able to move into compassion of how wounded he was as a child and how it affected him that he could never grow up. And that's what we're really all doing spiritually, is we're moving out of our immature, childlike behavior and growing up into handling it in a more mature way. So we actually gain wisdom from doing this and find out through our experience what not to do next time. So if you're also interested in reading about this some more, Brian Weiss, Dr. Weiss, has been on Oprah quite a few times. In fact, he actually did a regression on Oprah on television. I watched it. And so, in those days, people were using past life regressions for fear of snakes or other kinds of situations like that. Regression can be valuable for medical situations. I did when I channeled St. John the other day when I was at CBEC doing a past life workshop there recently, and that will be on YouTube shortly. And this lady there had a medical, the fellow actually she was with had a medical problem. And I went into trance and found the past life that was the origin of the medical problem still happening in his life today. So if you're interested in healing, and if you live in Western Washington State, there's free healing every Thursday afternoon at Camp Edgewood, which is next to Edgewood, just south of Federal Way, just north of Puyallup in that area. 2 o'clock, Camp Edgewood. We do free healing every Thursday just by donation. And we've had some amazing, wonderful experiences in that situation. In fact, a lady came with her daughter because she wanted support, and on a Thursday afternoon. And she had been given the diagnosis, was a fatal diagnosis of a lung and heart problem. And she'd had a relative die of this disease, and it was apparently, I've not been familiar with that particular situation, but it was scared her because the person really suffered through the dying process of this lung and heart problem. And she, of course, didn't want to die that way. So through past life, I channel St. John to get into people's past lives, and we found out where it started, what the medical situation was, and how to heal it. And she went for her checkup with her doctor after our healing. Mac helped me with that. He's a great healer, pranic healer, and can help you with all kinds of medical problems. And she found out the doctor was really surprised. He says, "Oh, it hasn't gotten any worse." That was on her first checkup. So a year later, she went in for her yearly checkup. And it was a situation where they put a mirror down you. And he says, "I don't see anything. I must have misdiagnosed you." So you can see how valuable knowing about your past lives can be. It literally saved her life. So she's still around, and I went dancing at her 25th wedding anniversary. We are here on the BBM Global Network, Tune In and Radio. And I'm Marilyn Redmond, and you're listening to Love Never Fails, and we have some more marvelous stories about past lives, so stay tuned. I'm Marilyn Redmond. You're listening to Love Never Fails, and we are on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio talking about past lives today. So glad you're still with us. It's really fascinating the things you can find out when you're doing this and searching it out, getting information, and having actually the experience. So many people will say, "Oh, that's a child prodigy," that person is so young and they can play. Oh, on YouTube, there's some small children that play absolutely like professional pianists or whatever instrument that have studied years and years to be able to be proficient like they are. And all of a sudden, here's this small little 8-year-old or 5-year-old being able to perform like an adult. And, there's no mistake in that. In fact, those are actually children with past lives that studied that before they came into this life. They were ready to have that ability so proficiently perfected. I'm being a musician from my past. I always was amazed that Mozart could play the piano at age 5 and compose a symphony at the age of 6. That to me is just amazing, because I would love to be able to I have melodies in my head all the time, but how do you get them on paper? I know how to write it and everything, but a whole symphony with all the instruments playing and everything, that boggles my mind. I can put a simple melody down and a chord, but I don't think I could handle a symphony. So, these people have done it over and over to get to the point where they are now. There's a wonderful little girl, she's probably grown up by now, that's on YouTube, and I saw her on Oprah too, that paints wonderful portraits, and one of her portraits is of Jesus. And it's without any training, without any background. She just asked her parents for the paint and the brushes that she needed, and she started painting these beautiful pictures. Oh, I'm an artist, and she just did a marvel. It's taken me years and years, and several of my past lives have done artwork and painting portraits. In fact, I painted the faces for one famous artist in the history, and I did a lot of portrait painting in other situations in other past lives. So that was just a natural thing for me to paint angel portraits, which they're available if you're interested in your angel portrait of what your angel looks like. I've done quite a few, and I'd be glad to do somebody's angel portrait. I see angels. Now, why can I do portraits? Because I've had other past lives where I did portraits. So these things are not necessarily just all of a sudden. They've been years and years preparing for these situations, and past lives, getting in touch with that helps us to understand it better. Cayce said, to find that we only lived and died and were buried under the cherry tree does not make thee one bit better neighbor, citizen, mother, or father. But to know ye spoke unkindly and suffered for it, and in the present may correct it by it being righteous, that's worthwhile. And that's what we're doing with our past life regressions, is making our life worthwhile. We're cleaning up the baggage of the past, you might call it, so that as we move on into higher energy, the presence of God, where it's love, unconditional love, and without condemnation, without criticism, and without judgment. That's called heaven on earth. And people, that's what we're moving into. The planet has already taken on that fifth dimension energy. It's called Christ consciousness. It's supporting our growing up into this higher consciousness. Consciousness is an energy. It's called love. And that's what we're gluing back together, are the pieces back together. We're like a drop of water in the ocean. God is the ocean of love. And we're putting our pieces back together so that we're part of that ocean instead of a drop separated from it. We're in the ocean of love, and that's what we're moving into with the work that we do to make our lives better. So we're passing, Cayce said we have to pass through every and each station and stage of development to be the correct vibration to become one with the Creator. So we're moving our consciousness. It's like Jacob's ladder. We're going into a higher consciousness of unconditional love. And the more we put our efforts into that, my life today is like I live in grace today. It is so smooth. My life was hectic. As I've been listening to the show, I didn't have a very happy growing up or marriage. My life today is so pleasant and so wonderful, and people helping me and I'm helping them. It's just a marvelous way to handle our lives, is when we can work together in cooperation. So even though I was a bad guy in the past, I'm learning to give up beating myself up about it. We're either, when it says you're all characters before you are actually coming back into oneness, and all of these have to be merged back. So it's really important that we do that. There's something I came across today on the internet, and this is from Abraham Hicks. Esther Hicks channels Abraham, and she does a marvelous job of helping us understand spirituality. And she says, through Abraham, through her, said, you create your own reality. And today we want to say that in the clearest way yet. You create the vibrational atmosphere which equals your vibrational point of attraction. And then the law of attraction matches you with things like you. And that's what I did to get into a healthier relationship. I had to change. I had to become the person I wanted. And then I became a magnet. And that person then was attracted to me because like attracts like in the universe. So we are creating what we want by changing ourselves. We can't change anybody else. We can only change ourselves. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and you can't change others. The courage to change the things I can, and I can only change myself. And the wisdom to know the difference. That's the trick. If I'm pointing a finger out, there's 3 fingers pointing back. Okay, wisdom. I've got to change me about this situation. I've just had a situation where I've had to come into that with my yard repair work. And I'm not always happy to say that I'm not the most perfect person in the world, but I sure did some learning lessons on changing me this last week into accepting reality and not fighting it or trying to make it different. So I'm Marilyn Redmond, and I'm on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio, and you are listening to Love Never Fails. And stay tuned. We have some more interesting information for past lives in the show coming up, so don't go away. Bye-bye. I'm your host, Marilyn Redmond. You're listening to Love Never Fails. We are on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio talking about past lives today. And I just want to say that to me this is really exciting because it changed my life considerably to know where it started, what I was doing wrong, and what I could do differently to get different results. I had to take different action to get different results. I do create my own reality. I had to change the domestic violence in my case to being productive in a healthy relationship. And I found that if I became the person I wanted to be, then that other person would be in my life because I would create and attract it to me. It's so practical to do past life regression that the gal that was my guest last week, Josie Varga, is requested that I do a past life regression on her. Now, I usually have people come to my home to do this, but we're going to try new. I'll tell you how it goes, but we're going to try Skype because she lives in New Jersey and I'm on the West Coast, and I've done readings all the way to Australia on Skype. So we're going to see. I've never done a past life before on Skype, but if you're interested, we could always set up a time and actually try that. So if you're interested in getting some more answers about why is your life going the way it is, this is one way to find out. I thought Josie was pretty wonderful in saying, speaking up and saying, gee, I'd like to try that. And so we're going to give it a shot, and we'll see how it works out. I've done exorcisms on Skype. I have done readings on Skype. I've counseled on Skype a lot, in fact, with people around the United States. So, this will just be one more little advent of another talent that we can try. Skype is a very practical tool, I'm finding out. And I'm so pleased to be able to share that, how practical this can be. So many people get concerned about, life isn't going well, and they don't seem to know about any tools to change it. And that's what my counseling is about, is showing you how to do it so it'll get the effect and the results that you truly want in your life. And next week, we're going to have a marvelous guest here. And it's Dr. Norman Shealy, and maybe you've heard about him. He actually started the Holistic Health AMA. Not the regular AMA is for regular medical doctors, but the holistic is for the alternative medicine people who have their ways that are not necessarily toxic, and they don't use medications or toxic substances. Dr. Shealy is a neurosurgeon, a psychologist, founding president of the American Holistic Medical Association, as I just said, president of Holos Institutes for Health. He's an international speaker and researcher, and he holds 10 patents, people, for discoveries And one of them is called the TENS, and I actually know a lady who uses that. It's for pain, and he has not copyright for the invention where you have the legal rights to own it for that. And he's published over 300 articles in 29 books. And he's going to be here next week. And he's going to be doing a program in September 29th in Richland, Washington. He's going to be doing a program in Houston, Texas, November 17th. And you're not going to want to miss either of those. So people who have attended his classes, it's a one-day program, have said his seminar was just amazing. I found myself captivated with his every word. Another participant said enlightening, fascinating, and most importantly, practical and immediately applicable information. And another person in attendance said, I especially liked how knowledgeable Dr. Sheely is, not only that he has answers for all kinds of questions, but he explains things well and in a personable way with a sense of humor. So stay tuned next week. Remember, Tuesday afternoon, Love Never Fails. We're here, and we just love having you call in and ask Dr. Sheely what your questions are for next week. Remember to be in joy, gratitude, and the presence of love, feeling good in reality. I'm Marilyn Redmond. This is Love Never Fails, and this is the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
You've been listening to Love Never Fails with your host, Marilyn Redmond. Go beyond old ideas and understandings and hear Marilyn's solutions to healing and a higher consciousness. Each week, here on Marilyn Redmond's Love Never Fails.